when you have money, when you start making money, there are some rules that you have to bear in mind and allocate your money based on those rules. So, what we're going to be doing is going through a few of those rules, and we're going to start with my favorite rule, and it's the rule of 72. This rule basically speaks to the state of determining how long it takes for your investment to double. We always talk about when am I going to double my money? Nobody wants to make 10% interest on their money only after having it for 50 years. Nobody wants that. We want our money to double. And the rule of 72 allows us to predict reasonably when the money will be doubled. So the idea is whatever the interest rate is that you're getting on that particular money compounded per year, you just have 72 and you divide it by that. So if you're getting an 8% return, you have 72 divided by 8 and it gives you approximately 9 years. So at 8%, your money will double by 9 years. At 10%, your money will double by 7.2 years. The rule of 72 is just a general calculation where you can understand when you are lending money, how fast your money will double, and when you are borrowing money, which we advise against, but if you are borrowing money, you can know how much you are actually paying for an item that you have purchased. So when you buy one car, you may think that you're only buying one car, but you're buying yourself a car and you're buying the company a car, and probably you're buying other persons in the company cars because of the amount of money that you actually spend on that car. So you need to know, is this in your best interest? We want our money to compound for ourselves and not to be exploited, not to be extorted, and not to be taken advantage of. The rule of 72, if you don't know any other rule, remember the rule of 72. And this rule is tied into compound interest. Compound interest is one of the most important interests that every single individual who touch currency, who enjoys the luxury of what the currency can provide to them, or money, we say in the modern world, which is not really money, it's just currency, that there is a rule and an understanding that you need to know. The simple interest is good, but compound interest is actually what the banks and the lending facilities use to calculate the amount that you are actually paying. So when they say you're paying 7% interest on something, compounded, it is not 7%, it may be 7.25, 7.3. It all depends on how it compounds, whether it compounds daily, whether it compounds weekly, whether it compounds quarterly. And you have to also remember, think about it like this: if you have a mortgage and you are paying your mortgage monthly, you're actually paying more than if you were paying your mortgage weekly. If you were paying it weekly, you'll be paying less. And you'll be saying, but it's the same amount that you're paying. Yes, it is the same amount you're paying, but you're not allowing the time of compounding to take place. We're going to go into a calculation in the future so that you can have an understanding as to what I'm really saying. But always remember the rule of 72. When you have $10, you don't want to know when you're going to have $10.10. That is okay when you're just starting out. But when you have $10, you want to know when will you have $20. When you have $20, you don't want to know when you're going to have $21. You want to know when you're going to have 40. When you have $40, you want to know when you're going to have $80. When you have $80, you want to know when you're going to have $160. When you have $160, and it compounds. And it compounds. And I want you to understand the rules of double. It takes 10 doubles to actually become a millionaire. So if you are able to double your money 10 times, you are in a good position to become a millionaire. And I know that if you are here, you are serious about securing your family's resources. You're serious about allocating and preparing for the generation that is to come. And as such, follow these examples, know these rules, and you will be in a good position. Another rule that many persons teach on is the 50-30-20 rule. And you'll realize that the 50-30-20 rule, it gives us 50%, then we have 30 and 20, which gives us another 50%. So at the end of the day, we have 100%. So basically, this is suggesting to us that we should allocate 50% of our income towards necessities. So your food, your clothing, your shelter, your transportation, whatever it is that is needed, that we consider necessity for you to survive reasonably, that should be 50% of your allocation. Then we move 30% towards discretionary expenses, which are expenses that you don't need but you can engage in. All right, such as eating out, which if you're not in a financially stable position, you should be cooking all your meals at home. Your entertainment, you should not be thinking about entertainment going to the amusement park if you are not financially sound. And then 20% should be savings and debt payment. But that is just a rule that they have given to us to follow. And financial analysis will prove to us that this is helpful. But in the real world, if you are in a financial bind, these numbers will not be in your best interest. What I advise is totally different, but this is a starting position until you have developed some sense of discipline so that you can enjoy the luxury that money can actually buy, the currency can actually buy. There's another rule that we have enjoyed, and it's similar. It's like the 70-20-10 rule. So this rule is saying to us that our money should be divided into these buckets, three buckets. We always keep it as simple as possible. All right. So 70% towards our needs, 20% towards our discretionary expenses, and then 10% towards our savings and debt payment. So this rule is similar to the 50-30-20 rule. So it's based on what you can manage, because I know that when we're making a transition from a debt-based system into a cash-based system, it's very difficult to leave the addiction to debt behind. And this is in a method of gradually weaning you in so that you can allocate your funds appropriately. There is another rule that we find very important, and it's the 80-20 rule. And this rule suggests that you should allocate 80% of your income towards fixed and variable expenses. Fixed expenses are expenses that remain constant, they don't change. Variable expenses are the expenses that can fluctuate, like a utility and stuff like that. The fixed would be like your mortgage, your rent, your car payment, if you have car payments, which we advise against. And then 20% towards your financial goals, such as your investment and your saving. I want you to know that the 80-20 rule is there to as a guide for you to make a financial positioning so that you can reap rewards in the early stage. But this is not the ideal situation. We'll get to the ideal in a little while. Then we have the 90-10 rules, but I'm just presenting to you some of the rules that exist in the world, that we're not reinventing anything, we're just modifying them so that they operate in our best favor. So you truly don't need a financial advisor. You should know exactly what your financial position is, and then you should be putting yourself in a state to reach your goal. You may need a coach to guide you on that journey, but you have to do the work independently or with your family members as a unit. But I am not going to be able to do the work for you. I'll just guide you so that you can do the work for yourself. The only time that you should be coming to me for guidance is after we have allowed you the opportunity to realize that you can actually make millions. When you have passed the bar of millionaire status, then I want you to reach out to me so that I can guide you as to how you actually keep that money and not allow the money to be taken away from you or go like the wind. But these are some simple guidance steps that can be taken in order for you to reach your financial goal. Another very important rule that many persons practice, many persons enjoy, is a 50-15-5 rule. And this rule, you realize it doesn't add up to 100%. This rule suggests that you should allocate 50% of your income towards necessities, 15% towards long term savings and investment, and 5% towards saving for unexpected expenses. So 50, 15, and 5. We have 50 and 15, that is 65, plus 5, that is 70. So we have 30% that we can do with it that which we desire. So it all depends on which rule that you are going to be using. Now, in money analysis, in money allocation, we have the 10% rule. And this rule basically suggests to us that we should allocate the 10% of our money towards saving of our income for the long term financial goals, such as what we're going to do after we have cease from working, how we're going to maybe even make the payment for our home that we desire to live in. So 10% of your money should be allocated, or is suggested to be allocated, towards your long term goals. And long term basically speaks to anything exceeding 10 years. Short term is 5 to 10 years. Anything above 10 years is long term for this exercise. But when I think of long term, I am actually thinking of 40, 50 years. So if you are in a position where you're young, you're vibrant, you can position yourself not for just this season, but for the season that is to come. So you are positioning your family's future. And that is where I want you to do, to be. And that is what I want you to do. But in order for you to be in a position where you can position your family's future, you have to come out of the scarcity mindset. You have to stop living from paycheck to paycheck. You have to be in a state of stability so that you can actually be comfortable to take risk. And in taking risk, strategic risk, calculated risk, we will position ourselves to gradually grow. I am not one who suggests the idea of getting rich quickly. If you want to get rich quickly, this is not the space for you. We're talking about 5 years to about 20 years, and within that time period, you should be a multi-millionaire. Within the first 5 years, you should be a regular millionaire. Within 20 years, you are a multi-millionaire, almost reaching billionaire status. If you just do the basic things that we are going to suggest. We have done this before, and it is possible for us to do it again. And in another sitting, I'm going to show you, we're going to start from zero. Just say that today is a day, the first day you're coming across this information. We're going to create an account, start from zero, and show you exactly how you can become a millionaire in 5 years. And that is just by playing it safe, not taking much risk, just playing it safe, protecting your family's wealth for the future that is to come. It doesn't matter if you're making $10,000 per year. It doesn't matter if you're making 100,000 or 500,000 or $1 million per year. These steps can be used in order to protect you in this season and also prepare you for the next season. The mistake that many people make is that they try to enjoy life to the fullest when they have nothing, which in some instances is commendable, that they are willing to take risk when they're young. But the idea that I want you to understand is when you're young, your youth is for you to learn as much as you can, move as fast as you can, get as much as you can, take as many risks as you can. And then when you reach into maturity in your 30s, then you start to scale back. When you reach in your 40s, you should be well established, especially if you're a man. When you reach into your 50s, you are thinking about all the investments that you would have made in your teens and in your 20s that are maturing. When you reach retirement in your 60s, your 70s, whether you're working or you're not working, everything should already be tabled. You can just live off what you would have invested in your 20s, in your 30s. So that's by the time you reach your 75, you are safe. You don't have to be depending on Medicaid, Medicare. You don't have to be depending on other persons to take care of you. And one thing I want you to understand is that it doesn't make any sense that you have a lot of money and you are still poor. When we say you have a lot of money and you're still poor, there is no real use of having a lot of money if you cannot enjoy it. So the problem that we are seeing is that many persons burn out themselves, make that money, but they never get the chance to enjoy it. Their health is compromised. They are crippled. They are shriveled. They can't move around freely. So what is the purpose of getting all this money if you can't enjoy it? What is the purpose of having all this currency but you can't enjoy it? Your family don't even know how to utilize it or just spend it. So these are things that I want you to know. I don't want you only to be wealthy financially. I want you to be healthy so that you can actually be wealthy overall. And I want your relationships to also reflect that. So, whatever your vocation is, wherever your mind is, these are the three focus areas that we are going to be targeting: your finances, your relationship, and your health. Because if we can combine all three, then you will be positioned to enjoy financial abundance, financial freedom, and whatever else you desire. So we are just putting things in place so that you can position yourself and determine if this is in your best interest, if this is in your family's best interest. Now, let us move into the rule of 15%. Yes, 15% rule is another allocation rule for money, and it just suggests to us that we should save 15% of our income for retirement. But you know how I feel about retirement already. The Bible never speaks about retiring. The Bible speaks about dying. The Bible speaks about the end of life, but the Bible never says that you should come to an age where you should stop working, stop contributing, and just be a dependent as you were when you were a child. The Bible never speaks about that. The Bible says that there are people who would experience poverty. The poor will always be among us. But when the Bible is speaking about the poor being among us, it means that those persons who are in ignorance, those persons who are in darkness, those persons who have not yet been illuminated, those are the poor people, and we are the light. We have the information. We should position ourselves as we can guide them into the marvelous light. But when it comes on to retirement, I don't think that any well thinking human being should live their life with the intention or the anticipation of one day just doing nothing. Because God instituted that we be here to occupy meaningfully until He comes. We may do scale back the amount of heavy work. We may use our minds more. We may guide people more. But retiring, stopping from working, is basically a recipe to set you up for that. Because if you are not contributing, then you're going to feel as though you are useless. Not that you're useless, but you're going to feel as though you're not adding value. And if you're not adding value, you're going to feel less than ideal. And in that situation, you are just going to say, hey, my time is up, even when your time is not up. So, retirement is not a biblical concept. Retirement is a financial institution concept so that they can get your resources in your younger days while they drive their nice car, they live in those big houses. Guess who is paying for it? You. Oh, yes, you are the ones paying for it. Why not position yourself so that you can set up your own retirement plan? That way, if things go awry, it's your fault. You don't have people stealing your money. You are the one who will be a steward of that money. But if you are not willing to trust yourself enough to secure your retirement, then you're in a very difficult situation. Now, let us move to the 30-day rule. 30-day rule is another allocation of your savings. So basically, it's a 30-day rule, but it's basically a 30% rule. So whatever windfall that you may get, say you get a bonus, say you get your tax refund, say you get a gift, the idea is that you should secure 30% of that windfall that you would have received. You should save it for long term financial planning. Yes, because this windfall may be a once in a lifetime, or it may come only once per year. So just put yourself in position to receive it, to keep it, so that you can compound it. And at the end of the day, you can get the residual payments that it brings. Many people make the mistake of making a lot of money but having nothing to show for it. This is where the lifestyle creep comes in. I don't want you to fall a victim to lifestyle creep. The reason why lifestyle creep is so dangerous is because it makes you believe that you can do things that you are not yet positioned to be doing. So, many persons have different theories, different principles, different ideologies. That is their prerogative. What I want you to do is to position yourself in such a way that you don't have to check your bank account after you make a purchase. Not that you should not check your bank account, because every single dollar in your bank account needs to be working. And we are going to speak about why my bank balance is what it is, and why I keep it that way, and why my checking account is only for paying bills. So you're gonna have some insight into how you as a regular person can manage your money so that you don't have to fall a victim to being a majority marginalized as you live in this world. Now, you know that we always talk about real estate being the only estate that is actually real. And we really love and enjoy real estate. Whatever vocation you do, whatever investment opportunity, whether it is stocks, it is mutual fund, it is ETF, it is futures, it is commodities, whatever it is, foreign exchange, whatever it is, cryptocurrency, whatever it is, I want you to take some of those virtual money off the platforms and put it into real tangible things, because those platforms can shut down at any time, whether it's social media. If you make money from that, you need to take money out of that social media. Don't keep it in your bank account. Put it in things that you can see. Put it in things that you can share with people, that you can enjoy. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can maybe not taste it because it's a property, right? But the idea exists there. So you want your money to become tangible. So if you need to buy a few gold bars, go and buy a few gold bars so that you can see the money in your hand. Having the money virtually is good, accessible, yes, but you are not in control of that money. You are just owed that money that you put in the bank. The money that you put in the bank that you worked for, allegedly, is not yours. It belongs to the bank. So they can decide who they're going to give that money to and who they are not going to give. So that is why sometimes we have currency traders or crypto traders having no opportunity to transfer money to certain exchanges because they are saying, I don't really like what you're doing. I don't like your style. I don't like, and they say, hey, we're not going. So you have to position yourself how you want. And I want you to think about position yourself in such a way that you become your own bank eventually. So I know that we're going through a lot of things, but there are many money allocation rules that exist. I want you to position your mind so that when we are speaking about them, you are well equipped to making decisions which are in your favor. So, we're talking about real estate, and there is a 1% rule. Basically, this is the rule that guides and suggests that the monthly rent for a rental property should be at least 1% of the purchase of that property. All right, so you buy a property for 200,000. 1% of 200,000 indicates that the rent should be about $2,000. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. So if you have 1% rule being established, being instituted, being enacted within 100 years, you'd think that your money would double. But is that true? Not so. If we do the rules of 72, we have 1%, we have 72. So in 72 years, you would have bought another house. So the 1% rule is good so that you can stabilize and have an idea as to how your finances are going to determine profitability of that particular investment that you are engaged in. All right. So this rule is based on the idea that the rent of the property should cover the cost of owning and maintaining this property, including the mortgage payment, the property taxes, the insurance, and any necessary renovations that exist. The problem that many people face is that they buy a property, but they bought it for cheap. However, the taxes will drive them crazy. And when you're in those kind of area that sell the property for cheap, but the taxes are almost crazy to the point where they are making more money than you are making if you rent your property, then you have to reassess the area that you are actually building in. Many persons make the mistake of going into gated communities. A gated community is basically a glorified housing prison facility, but many people don't even realize that it is a facility that locks you in. People may say, hey, I am safer. I understand the feeling, but is it really worth it? So some it may be worth it to be in a confined space where you have people watching over you, but for others, it is not worth it. So you have to decide where you want to put your money. But personally, I don't recommend gated community. I don't recommend community that has HOA, which is homeowners association. I don't recommend those community because the HOA, especially in the United States, have such authority that they can foreclose on your house that you have actually paid for. I don't play those games. Whatever I have access to, my family should be able to access, and the people that I care for should be able to access. I shouldn't be restricted to what I can do, when I can do what. So I stay away from those communities. So you have to know what your temperament is, what rules and restrictions you are willing to subject yourself to when you are moving into a new community. And I know that many persons like the convenience, but there is a price, a very high price for convenience. I have seen many of my friends, persons who I may have associated with, who have bought into these communities and have their properties taken away from them because of simple infractions, and most of them are away most of the time, so they don't know what is really happening. So if the grass grows too high, they start writing you, they start charging you, and you have to pay a monthly fee, which is ridiculous. So basically, if you have paid off for your house, you have your light and your water. If you use it, you pay that, excepting for the the rental of the boxes. You still have a rent to pay to the HOA. That just doesn't make sense for a person who comes from a society where you are allowed to own whatever you have. So even as we move forward, we realize that they are taking away the ability to own things. And in taking away the ability to own things, many persons will be so dependent on the corporate structure in terms of the companies that are listed on the market, the stock market, to provide their housing needs. And then guess what's going to happen? They're going to start to fix rates and increase rental property value, which means that majority of your pay now will be going into rent because they control the market. So I want you to be in a position where you have enough money to make strategic and rational decision so that you can do what is in your best interest. It's not that we're trying to scare you, it's just that we're trying to present to you some ideas that you can use as is necessary so that you can enjoy a full life. And real estate is a very good investment, especially if you know what you're doing. Some persons say buy, borrow, and die. I am not really into that realm. I don't believe that you should subject your tenants to a situation where you don't own the property, the bank can foreclose on that property and take it away from your tenants. I know the idea of investing exists, but even if you start out that way, I don't think it should be a long term play where you're constantly refinancing, you're constantly making the bank money and having other persons paying for that luxury that you are enjoying. But that is where strategic positioning comes into play, because most of my associate, they are engaged in multi-million-dollar real estate dealings, and they are very profitable in what they do. And it started with just the first property, and from the first property they got not what they got double, then they move on to doubling again, and then exponentially they have 100 doors, some have 500 doors, some have over 1,000 doors. So you have to just know where you are. You have to start at the right time. You have to get yourself educated so that you can make a strategic decision, not for yourself, because after you reach a certain amount of money you realize that money is okay. The money that you have, you can actually live on, you can survive, you can live an exceptional life. The money that you have will no longer be the driving factor. It will now be your passion, it will now be your purpose. So you have to decide how you want to position yourself. And I hope that you're thinking about positioning yourself so that you are not only rich but also wealthy. Your relationships are structurally sound. Your health is solid, which means that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. Now, let us move to the 2% rule. 2% rule is a guideline that suggests that the total monthly carrying cost of a rental property should not exceed 2% of the purchase price of the property. The carrying costs of the property include the expenses of the mortgage payments, the property taxes, and anything necessary for renovation, remodeling, etc. The 2% is based on the idea that the carrying cost for the rental property should be manageable and not exceed a significant portion of the property value. By keeping the carrying cost at or below 2%, you may be able to generate a what we call cash flow, but not just a cash flow, a positive cash flow. Because if you have a property for 200,000, but to maintain the property, it is costing you 2%, which is 4,000, because 200,000 at 1% is 2,000. So 1% times plus 1%, that gives you 2%. So that's $4,000. So remember, we want to rent the property at least at 1%. So now the rent is going to be not anymore at 1% if we have bills excess of 2%. And this is where the challenge comes in and the balance has to be reached. So you have the property rented at 2,000, but the expenses are 4,000. What happens is that 2,000 minus 4,000 leave you with minus 2,000. So now this property has a negative cash flow over 12 months. That 2,000 leads you into a negative 24,000 out of your pocket deficit, and that is not a good position to be financially. So you have to weigh the balance and ensure that you make money in the purchase. The purchase of something is actually where you make the most money. If you buy wrong, then there's no real sense in holding on to a negative cash flow asset indefinitely, because you're losing money. It is taking money from somewhere else. You want all your assets that you hold to be neutral at the least, or generate a positive cash flow. So we have the 1% rule, that we're going to rent for at least 1% of the property value. The 2% rule, that tells us that, hey, the carrying cost of the property should not exceed 2%. So if you're renting for 1% and 2% is the carrying cost, then you're in negative cash flow already. Now we have the 3% rule. It is a guided that the carrying cost of the property and payments of property taxes and all this kind of stuff should not exceed 3% of the property's rental income. So whatever it is that you actually get, the carrying cost should not exceed 3% of that rental income. The 3% rule is based on the idea that the carrying cost of the rental property should be manageable and not exceed a significant portion of the property's rental income. By keeping the carrying costs at or below 3%, you may be able to generate a positive cash flow from the property. So let us go to an example. For example, if a rental property generates $1,000 in monthly rental income, the 3% rule suggests that the total monthly carrying costs, including taxes, including maintenance, all this kind of stuff, should not exceed 3% of the $1,000, which is $30. So the 3% rule is intended to be a general guideline rather than a hard and fast rule. It assumes that the property is in good condition and the market value is reasonable, so that you can get your money's worth from the property. So this rule is very important for us to understand, but it does not stop there. There are other rules that we'll go through in the future. Now, let us move into retirement. I know that many persons know that I am not a fan of retirement, but there is a rule that I want you to remember, and this is the 4% rule. Basically, this rule indicates that you can withdraw 4% of your saving each year without running out of money. Yes, this rule is based on the idea that withdrawing a fixed percentage of your saving each year, you can balance the needs for income within a reasonable measure so that you can live comfortably. So if you have saved up $500,000 for retirement, 4% rule suggests that you can withdraw $20,000 per year without running out of money. And when we are saying that, we're talking about having the rest of the principal being reinvested, compounding at about 10%, so that there is an adjustment for inflation. If that is happening, then technically you should not run out of money, but the markets doesn't always go up. The markets sometimes have downside. So you have to position yourself with an excess so that you can safeguard against that. So if that is the case, then you are in a good position. All right. Now, there is another money allocation rule, which is a 3-30-10 rule. And this money management rule suggests that you should allocate your income in the following way. So 3% for a down payment on a house. Yes. This includes down payment on a home, which is typically one of the largest purchases that an individual will make. And many persons don't understand that buying a house is not just buying a house. Buying a house is one of the biggest liabilities that you may take on to yourself. Many persons think that a house is an asset. A house only becomes an asset if it's generating a positive cash flow. If you have a rental property that generates positive cash flow, that there is an asset. Once something is taking money out of your pocket, that is not an asset, that is a liability. So if you're paying rent, if you're paying mortgage, if you're paying all these kind of things, utility bill, if you're paying to just live in that house is not an asset. That house is a liability. But it is a start. What I would suggest is that you think about having a duplex in which you have two sides at least, one to the right, one to the left, and then you share in that space. And in sharing that space, you reduce your expenses. And if you have a quadplex, then maybe you can rent a tree and live in one, and then now you'll be in a better position. You may have a positive cash flow. So this is something that I want you to think about. So the 3-30-10 rule indicates that 3% of your payment of your income should be paid towards one of the biggest financial investments or liabilities that you'll take on, which is purchasing a home. 30% ongoing house expenses and 10% towards ongoing maintenance. These include money spent on painting, landscaping, and replacing appliances. So the 3-30-10 rule is meant to be a guideline for managing your housing expenses and can help you to determine how much you need to save for the down payment and associated costs. It is important to remember that it is just a general guideline and it is not hard and fast. If you want to avoid all of these rules, what I suggest to you is to put yourself in a financial position where you don't have to take a loan to buy your home. If you're in a debt-based society, you may have some offers on the table, and when we go into the amortization calculation, you'll realize how many homes you're actually buying the bank before you pay off for your home. And in some instances, it is in excess of 15. Yes, those 30-year mortgages are actually killers. So if you can get into a 30-year mortgage, it means that you have a level of reliability to a degree. So if you can be reliable for the bank to be extending 30 years, why not extend that same reliability, that same confidence the bank has in you, so that you can get the best from that reliability positioning, in that you are so reliable and the bank think that 30 years they can get the money out of you and they can get probably 15 more houses out of you. Why not just hold fast, hold straight, and save up so that you can don't only have the down payment, you can buy the house outright. And I'm gonna say yes, many persons that I know actually buy their house outright. Taking a loan is not a common practice in the Caribbean. If we can't buy the house outright, we'll buy the land and put a shack on it. And then over time, 10, 20 years, we build a house that we desire. So that is how the culture is designed. But in the modern society, in the Western world, many persons take out this mortgage, buy these luxurious homes that they cannot afford, or they're not in a position yet to stably afford, and the interest is front loaded. So they are paying interest before they are paying the principal, and then they find themselves 30 years later, I still have not yet completed the payment for the house. Oh, you forgot you refinance. And when you refinance, that there is a big scam. Refinancing. After the bank would have gotten, let's say, 70% of the interest, they want to refinance, because when they refinance, what happens is that it starts over. You may get a lower rate, but it still starts over. So all those fees, the bank is just eating money two times. So they make money on the front end when they give you the loan, because they have the processing fee, the origination fee. They make money during the process because you have to pay them first, the interest. They make money during the process as well, when you have to get updates, you have to clear balances, you have late payments. They make money on the back end when you have to clear your loan, in that when you are clearing your loan, you are not just clearing the loan, you're also clearing other obligations that you have. So they make money from the start, in the middle, and at the end. And by the time you finish paying for your house, guess what? It's time to buy another. So the cycle continues. So if you are in this trap, you will be in there for eternity if you are not willing to realize that this is not how the Lord desired for you to live. Have you ever wondered, if God created everything and He gave it to us, why should we have to pay for it? Why should you be restricted to going to a particular place, traveling to a certain destination, requiring entry into certain territory? Do you think that something is wrong with that dynamics? If not, that's okay. If yes, continue to think, and maybe one day you can give me some clarity and some answers. So let us run through some quick other allocations, some quick allocations that can be used. So save about 10% of your income for long-term financial goals. I want you to do this. I want you to save 10 to 15% if you believe in retirement, for retirement. I want you to save 10% at least for your retirement. Just as how you can give the church 10% in tithings, you should be able to give yourself at least 10%. All right? So you're going to follow the 50, 30, 20 money allocation rule as much as possible. If you cannot follow that rule, then you can follow other rules based on where you are currently financially. I don't want to fall in the trap of having extravagant interest payments in which you are sacrificing the interest payments and putting yourself in a compromised position. I don't want you to be in that situation. So what I want you to do is to consider paying off high interest debts. You can use the debt snowball, so you pay the smallest and you carry it up, 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 up. But the way that I advise men to do it, because men are less emotional and more critical in their thinking, they would use the avalanche method, because when we look at the paper, we are looking at numbers. We don't care about how we feel. Females are more emotional, so a snowball effect would be better for them, because they feel that they're accomplishing a little here, a little there over time. So based on understanding that dynamics, I recommend females use the snowball method, but men who don't concern about emotion and who can stick through it, then you can use avalanche. So basically, you're going to find the highest interest rate, whether it's the highest bill that you have, you clean that off. The excess that you have from that, you throw it in to the other that is lower, and you lower it and you clear them off until you have zero. We're going to go exactly how we're going to do that. The snowball method is you do the smallest payment that you have, you clear that off, and then you go up. So it doesn't matter the interest rate. but in the avalanche, the interest rate is important. All right. So this is how you can tackle it. So always remember, save at least 30% of your windfall. So this is a 30-day principle. Save 30% of your windfall. Save 25% of your income, or let's say 25, about 25% of your income on the down payment of a house, at least 25%. So I want you to also consider having an emergency fund. An emergency fund is basically 3 to 6 months worth of funds that you have just peradventure something happens. So this is 3 to 6 months liquid funds that you have, not in the stock market, not in any real estate deal, not tied up in any retirement plan. This is what you have liquid. All right. I want you to have liquid money. Yes, even though we don't utilize the banking facilities as a store of our financial value, we use the banking facility as a transaction vehicle to have funds flowing in and have funds flowing out. All right. So have your emergency fund stored up. If you want to go on vacation, buy a new car, you need to start saving for that. Don't wait until the time when you're going on vacation that you think about the payment for the vacation. Do not put any vacation on any credit card. That there is ludicrous. A vacation does not generate cash flow. A vacation takes out money from your pocket. If you can't afford to go on a vacation by paying cash, do not go on a vacation. You do not yet qualify to go on that vacation that you want to go. If you want to go on a vacation, take a hike, go on a bicycle ride, do something that does not cost a arm and a leg and puts you in a compromising position. Save at least 5% of your income for luxury indulgence. And if you're not making luxury money, then I don't think you should be wearing luxury items. All right? Think about the snowball effect. Think about the debt avalanche effect. If you have children, put 15% aside towards your child's education. For wedding, you should not be spending an exorbitant amount on weddings, because a wedding ceremony, who are you? Are you an entertainer? So you are paying for entertaining other persons. If persons are coming to your wedding, why shouldn't they be the ones to pay to see you entertain them if you are the entertainer? I want you to think about it from that perspective. But every family, every structure is different. You know, you have traditional wedding and all this kind of stuff. But you have marriage under contract and marriage under covenant. It has been scientifically proven that the more expensive a wedding is, the less likely for the wedding to survive. So I don't know what is the cause and what's the correlation, but I don't concern myself with that. But what I want to say to you is, put yourself in a proper financial position where you don't have to look at the check. You don't have to look at the tab, but you're still going to look at it. All right? But you don't have to look at it. Because the reason why you're going to look at it is because you have to be accountable for every single dollar. You don't want anyone to shaft you, knowing that you have worked so hard to be where you are. I want you to think about also investing in a business. No matter what I share with you, you will never become rich, you'll never become wealthy just working for an individual or a company. The company will only pay you enough to do the work based on the market rate and not necessarily based on your actual value and work. So you have to remember that. So you need to have a business. Yes, you can work for other people. We are not saying I like working for other people. I work independently, yes, but I like working for other people. I like having that interaction. So when you are positioned in a way that you have a business, you are not totally dependent on one source of income. Your business may fail, yes. That is why you have the backup plan, which is the W2, the 9 to 5. And in some instances, it's not really a backup plan, but you just enjoy doing what you're doing. And we understand that, and that is totally fine. The people you work with, they enjoy sharing in the vocation that you're sharing in. So some persons actually work as a voluntary exercise, in that They don't have to work, because a lot of my friends who actually work, they don't have to work. They just work as a voluntary exercise that they can be among people who are regular, if you understand what I'm saying. So you have to just think about it from a logical perspective. They have their businesses, but they still go to a job that is not even paying them that much, just because they want the human interaction. So having a lot of money and having no one to share it with is going to be a big problem. So you have to prepare people that you can have in your space to share in the blessings that God has given to you. And I know that many persons like to share, and that is where charity comes in. So you have to think about how much money you'll be allocating to charity. About 10% can be allocated to charity. Much money you want to allocate to a new property, maybe 10% or 20%. So you have to just balance this out based on where you are, understanding the whole gamut of things that are available to you, and then you can make decisions which are in line with your mental objectives. Because remember, your objectives, your desires for your future will be different from my desires for my future. And even if you have a family, each individual in the family may have different desires, different objectives, different obligations. So you have to know, say to yourself, what is in the best interest for me, for my family? And then you move forward based on that. I hope that this sitting was indeed a blessing to you. I surely hope that God's wisdom would have showered down upon you, and your eyes have been opened to steps and measures that you can take, so that you don't have to live as the majority, which is in a state of mediocrity. I hope that you are so enlightened that you are now ready to put things on paper, so that you can be strategically positioned to enjoy the thriving that God desired for you to have. He says that you are to dominate. Yes, you should have dominion. And that is exactly what you should do. Until we meet again, blessings.